Welcome back, warriors. Kwe Tansei Sego Anibuju. Kwe Nindaluizi Pam Palmater, and I'm the host of this show, The Warrior Life. This podcast is a show about living the warrior life, a lifestyle that focuses on decolonizing our minds, bodies, and spirits, while at the same time revitalizing our cultures, traditions, laws, and governing practices. It's also about asserting, living, and defending our sovereignty all over our traditional territories. And we come from all different nations and cultures and backgrounds, and we contribute to our nations in a variety of ways. On this Warrior Life podcast, we've talked to so many amazing Indigenous peoples in what is now known as Canada and the United States. We've heard inspiring stories from grassroots land defenders, water protectors, and human rights advocates, as well as educators, writers, lawyers, as well as people who represent us as actors and singers and even chefs. For so long, our voices were not represented, but this is changing every day. The more we can amplify each other's voices as Native peoples, the more we can help inspire all of us to continue our resistance, our resurgence, and our cultural revitalization, whether we're First Nations, Inuit, or Métis. Today's guest is someone who is truly dedicated to the well-being of her people and works in an amazing number of roles to help protect and promote Inuit culture, languages, and traditions. And when I say many roles, I mean many roles. Nancy Mike is an Inuk researcher, educator, nurse, accordionist, throat singer, visual artist, and author. And just in case that wasn't enough, she even co-founded her own band. I mean, that's like, wow. Welcome so much to the show, Nancy. Well, thank you. I feel really honored that you're taking the time to chat with us because honestly, with all of those roles, I don't know how you have enough time. You seem to be involved in 100 things at once. But before we jump into it, because I have some really key questions I want to ask you, maybe you could introduce yourself the way that you like to, you and your community.
Nancy Mike Nguyunga Ekalonino Nakaluktunga Panaktumita Sayolunga. My name is Nancy ᒪකිৎ뚜ᖅ, and I currently live here in Inuit, Nunavut, originally from Fernwood, which is north of Inuit. And I moved to Inuit, I guess, soon, right around when I wanted to do my grade 11 and 12, so I've been here since. And I go back home to Fernwood each year to visit my family, but I currently live here in ᒪකිৎ뚜ᖅ, Apex, just a little drive away from the downtown core part of the Inuit. And I have 3 young daughters who are my heart and soul. Everything that I do is for them and for our culture and language. So yeah, that's kind of my introduction.
Just you're involved in so much. I hardly know where to start, but maybe I'll just start out chronologically and I'll let you take it from there, because for looking at your background, it doesn't seem like you just had one solitary path that you engaged on. Your journey seems to have branched out into a whole bunch of really awesome directions. And, maybe you could share a little bit about your life's journey and, how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, I was adopted to my mother, Ina, from her younger sister, and so I was brought up in a large family. And growing up, one of the things that I really noticed was that colonization had a huge impact on our people on so many levels. And when I seen Inuit especially sometimes expressing that they're incapable of doing certain things, that made me feel like I needed to prove myself that I am a capable person. I am a capable human being. And so I think that brought me to having so many interests in a lot of different things that I do in my life, because I kept on wanting to say, we are strong, we are Inuit, we've lived through one of the most harshest things in life, you know, like living in an environment alone in a place as cold as here. I think that like that always brings me back to how amazing our ancestors were and how strong they were. And so I kept on wanting to bring that back and wanting to see other Inuit to thrive and to be successful and to be proud of themselves. And so I think this is kind of where I got into a lot of the things that I wanted to do, and that I continue to do. Not only that, like I have many interests in many different things, and constantly wanting to do something new. And I think that when I think back to it, I've thought lots about like, why do I constantly change my, you know, artistic ways, or I'm always wanting to move or do something. And I thought about it previously, and I was like, maybe it's because our ancestors lived like a semi-nomadic lifestyle where they traveled following the hunting grounds and the animals and the seasons, whatnot. So that's kind of how I saw it, I guess, myself, because I'm constantly doing something new, and and not because I'm not wanting to do it, but mostly because I have all these, I don't know, wanting to do certain like different things in life. And so that's kind of how I got into these different things.
Well, one of the things that you're engaged in is, you know, you're a nurse. And I'm wondering if you can share with our listeners a little bit about, you know, how you become a nurse. Like, what's the educational path, especially in the North, where there's less universities, for example?
Yeah, my late father was a full-time hunter. He spent a lot of his time out on the land, and we'd be camping with him months at a time, especially in the fall time, which was when we'd be caribou hunting. But my mom had to stay and not stay, but she had to find a job so that we can financially be stable. And she worked at the health center in ᒪᑭաթ뚜ᖅ when I was, ever since I could remember. And every time I visited her at her work, I always thought that she was a nurse. It's kind of funny because I would go in and, you know, play around with the nurses, and they'd show me, you know, different things. Like, you know, they always loved giving me stickers or band-aids, things like that. And when my mom was working there, I constantly thought about like, I want to be a nurse one day. And so when I finished high school, I ended up going to Ottawa to take the Nunavut program, which is a Inuit studies program based in Ottawa. And when I took that, it kind of made me realize what I really wanted to do in life. And one of the big things was like, I really enjoy helping people. And then, so I came back to Iqaluit and took the nursing program here at the Nunavut Arctic College, which is affiliated with Dalhousie University in Halifax. And so that's kind of how I got into nursing. It definitely wasn't easy. It's a 4-year program, but it took me 6 years to do, as I had my 2 older daughters throughout the 6 years. So it's been a journey. Like it's really amazing to become a nurse and to be working in a hospital with patients that are Inuit. And when I speak to them in Inuktitut, they're always in awe and like just so amazed to be able to get the care they need in their own language. So I think there are many things that I absolutely love about nursing, but that's kind of how I've gone through it.
Well, the cultural aspect must be so significant. I mean, First Nations and Inuit people have been saying for so long, we need our own people representing us in everywhere, but especially as doctors and nurses and technicians and home support workers and all of the people, especially in the health fields, because health healthcare can be racist, it can be discriminatory, it can be overwhelming, especially when you're in a crisis. And so to have a friendly face and someone who can speak your language, I can only imagine what that must mean, especially for people that are in crisis or elders who may not speak both languages. Do you find a lot of that people, especially the elders, may not speak both languages?
Yeah, majority of the elders actually don't speak English, and so they're unilingual speakers. And as soon as you walk into their hospital room and you speak to them in Inuk, they just light up and they just relax, and like you can tell their body language, or their body just relaxes and gets comfortable. Like it's so nice to see. And you're right, like we need better access to healthcare up here, but I often say this, that even though we may be seeing a lot of negative things in our health field, I think that we're also on the good side of things, because Nunavut being colonized so much later than the rest of Canada, we've had that time to really get things right and do it right. And I feel that our people are doing so many good things in our communities that are a little maybe more advanced than some parts of Canada, because of us being colonized a bit later. And it's not all good, obviously. Like I can't say that everything we do in our communities is all happy and amazing, but I just like to acknowledge that Inuit are doing such good, amazing things in our communities, that I think we tend to focus on the negatives. And and I absolutely love seeing Inuit thrive in the work that they do within our people, within their families, within themselves. It's really good.
Your point about acknowledging that and celebrating that and lifting up the positive that is going on, so that people are aware of what is the good that's going on and how can this be replicated in other communities and other places. And I think that's an important part of amplifying different voices of people in different areas, so that we can see that. And one of the things that I found really inspiring, by all of your work is inspiring, but it's the fact that you work with and reach out to Inuit of all ages. So you're not just focused in one particular area. And one of the areas that you work in is community and family health. As a researcher for important projects, and you do workshops targeted at things like sexual health and healthier relationships for Inuit youth. Can you share a little bit about this work and why it's so important to work with youth on these particular issues?
Yeah, I work as a research associate with ᒪကိþᑐᖅ Health Research Center here in Inuit. And like you said, that one of the programs that we run is the ᒪကိþ堵ᖅ sexual health training. And ᒪကိþ堵ᖅ means my body, the light within. And this was developed because the community recognized that there was a need for sexual health training. And we didn't want to go towards, where, like a nurse working in public health might go into a high school and talk about, condoms or sexuality or the anatomy and physiology of our reproductive system. So this ᒪကိþ堵ᖅ was more geared or made towards the idea of working with youth in an arts-based environment where we can talk freely and openly and have a safe space to talk about healthy relationships and sexual health and anti-bullying, or these different topics. And one of the amazing stories that I've heard throughout, when we hold these trainings with youth, is one of the artists in town, Blacklock Williamson Bathory, is an amazing artist, and she does Greenlandic mask dancing, uyamnak, and she'll come into do the workshop with us, and she'll do the mask, like putting the makeup on to do the mask dancing and talk about sexuality, and then also use Inuit storytelling, like integrating it into teaching what healthy relationships mean, or what love is, and how we show love, or there's many different things we talk about in this program, but it's arts based, which is what I love, because we not only do the uyalnik, we also do music, we do storytelling, we've done visual arts as well, and we're constantly learning on how to do it. But youth often have such good feedback after taking the workshop, and one story that I was about to tell was when there was one boy. He was very shy, didn't talk much throughout the workshop, and then when Lakuluk did her mask dancing, and like they transformed themselves into, whether it was like a polar bear or a wolf or any type of animal, they Lakuluk had asked them to, start acting out into what they wanted to become. And so when that boy put that mask on, he just transformed into a different human being almost, like just being able to express after putting that mask on. I thought like that was the most amazing story to see and hear, knowing that youth, when they're given the tools or resources to be able to express themselves, they will do it. And so that's one of the things I love about this program that we run at QHRC.
Well, that's exactly, one of the reasons why we need to celebrate these projects and initiatives and things that are working, that are culturally based, clearly artistically based, but actually are effective, are safe, familiar ways to reach youth who are not always reachable because of issues that they're going through, especially if they're in their teen years or they've had difficulties. So that's a really good news story about the important work that you're doing up there. And you're involved in so many important things, but one of the ways which you have been contributing to Inuit culture and community is you dedicate some of your time to supporting Inuit organizations like ᒪකිթ뚜ᖅ. Can you tell us a little bit more about that organization, what it does, who they represent, and some of, maybe some examples of the important work that they do, because I understand that you're a board member there.
ᒪකිթ뚜ᖅ Inuit Women of Canada do work around Inuit women issues that we see in our communities, and I think that it's so important for Inuit women to be heard and to have a voice. And so one of the reasons why I wanted to join this board was mostly having understanding of being a woman and having 3 children who are girls and who are going to become women one day. I felt that it was very important for me to take on this role and to be able to contribute to such an amazing team who work, from many different parts of northern parts of Canada, or even from rural areas such as Ottawa or Yellowknife. And so one of the things that ᒪකිթ뚜ᖅ recently announced was that they'll be working with the RCMP to develop some content to support Inuit women, and I found that so amazing. And one of our other board members had lost a daughter with, not having access to the right, I don't know what the term would be, but there wasn't a RCMP detachment in one of the communities that the daughter had been murdered in, and I found that very touching, to see the mother be a part of the board, and just heartbreaking and amazing at the same time. And I was like, how would I even go about doing this? But women like her are so inspiring, and I feel very privileged to be able to take part in being a board member with ᒪᑭˈᑐᖅ.
You think about all of the work that we do, whether it's on a First Nation level or Inuit, it's, we've got nation-based work, we've got local community-based work, and then we have work with, all different groups. It could be elders, youth, women, children, men, like you name it. There's all different groups. And I think that, ᒪᑭˈᑐᖅ has stood up and been a very strong voice for Inuit women on a whole bunch of issues. I mean, they were very strong during the National Inquiry into Murdered and Missing Indigenous Women and Girls. They're very vocal, and I think that shows a really strong leadership force for Inuit women, and to have their own voice. So not to be represented necessarily under a big umbrella organization, which tends to happen, that, represents all Native people, but because we're all so different and we have different conditions and different histories. And so, your role on that board is very, very important. It's a contribution that you're making. So far, we've talked about your professional work and your research and workshops and the contributions you're making to ᒪᑭ́tztu̱k, but somehow along the way of all of this, you've also found space or made space to express yourself artistically, in terms of, co-founding your own band, being an accordionist, a throat singer, a visual artist. I mean, that just amazes me. And I'm wondering if you can share a little bit about some of the, the different ways in which you've engaged your artistic creativity, because I definitely want to hear about this band.
Yeah, I joined the Jerry Cans band back in 2011, I believe it was, and we started by incorporating throat singing into more of like modern style music, which had been done previously as well by other artists, but it was fairly new, to be incorporating throat singing. But we wrote songs in Inuktitut. Majority of our songs are written in Inuktitut, which I absolutely loved about. And throughout the years, like, I've had opportunities, to travel the world, and be on like big stages, and not many have that opportunity. Like, I feel very privileged to have been, a part of this, and to be artistically, engaged in this way. And it became a part of who I am. Like, one of the reasons why I got into, being vocal about our issues, whether it be like Inuit issues or contemporary today's issues, I really enjoy using music and performing to talk about some of these issues, and to encourage people to learn about, Indigenous history or Indigenous people in their areas. And so it became a big passion, I think, for me to speak openly about what I wanted to speak about, whether it was the issues we face, whether it was about Inuit culture, our language, my own personal experiences with my late father. There were many amazing moments with music, for sure. And more recently, I kind of stepped away from the jerry cans and have been focusing more on being an independent artist and working from home and focusing on my kids. And so a lot of my work is now more remote stuff, especially because of COVID-19 impacting a lot of our, opportunities in touring or traveling. So that's kind of, I guess we're taking a break, if you want to say it that way. But more recently, I actually collaborated with a tribe called Red and recorded ᒪကိဿᑐᅅ, that one of our songs, and a tribe called Red had made it more of a dance tune, and it was for one of I don't know if you know Naila Inuk, who is a filmmaker based in Toronto. She's working on a film called Slashback, and so this song will be used in that film, and that was a really exciting moment to be able to collaborate with a tribe called Red, who I absolutely love and look up to as well for their work that they do in music. And then about a year ago, we were supposed to be heading out on tour with Tanya Tagaq, and that got postponed as well. So that's been hard. I never deleted my my calendar, and so once in a while I'll get a notification touring with Tanya on these dates, or I would have been in Germany about a month ago, or these things that are not happening due to COVID-19, and so it's a bit hard that way. But I've been finding ways to be more creative at home as well, whether it's sewing or painting, and I do a bit of songwriting here as well, mostly lyrically, because I don't have many no access to an actual recording space at this time, so it's a bit hard that way too. But yeah, I do find it, it's a bit easier to deal with the things that are coming with COVID-19, whether it's not being able to travel or not being able to visit family. It's been an interesting way to express what I'm feeling through different ways of doing art, I guess.
Well, what exciting opportunities too. So, having had the experience of being with a band in your own language, having had the, experience of collaborating with a tribe called Red, because we're all huge fans of a tribe called Red, and potentially touring with Tanya in the future. I mean, who doesn't want to go to an event that Tanya's holding, and to know that you would be collaborating with her? Like, that would just be so amazing. It's one of those post-pandemic things that we want to do. Go see a tribe called Red with you there, and go see Tanya with you there. I mean, that's, all of that's kind of like work in the making, but we're all kind of having to deal with this pandemic in our own ways. One of the things that I wanted to ask you about specifically, one of the reasons why I asked you to be on this podcast, is because you have written a book that, and it was something that ᒪကိဿ뚜ᅅ was promoting. You were doing a live reading. You wrote a children's book called Elisapee and Her Baby Seagull, and it won the 2017 finalist for the Fernwood Indies Award for picture books. I mean, first of all, congratulations. But can you tell us about this book? Like, what inspired you to write this book, what it's based on, and, some of the other bits and pieces about, who did the artwork and all of that stuff?
Elisapee is actually one of my middle names. I have 8 names, and naming is such a beautiful part of our culture. When someone passes away, the newborn babies that are born, they're usually named after that person, and it becomes a whole like a grieving process, or being able to tell stories of that person to the child as they grow up is a way of teaching and keeping knowledge. But Elisapee was my grandfather's aunt, and so when she passed away, my mom named me Elisapee after her. And when I wrote this book, I thought about using different names, but I really stuck with Elisapee for this book specifically. And growing up, my late father, Levi, used to bring home baby seagulls or ducklings sometimes, and whenever he brought them home, I'd take care of them and learn how to nurture them, learn how to feed them, learn how to learn their environment and how they do things. And this one seagull that I had as a kid, just we were best friends. Like I took care of it and would feed it. My dad taught me like which foods they like, and then my dad would bring me to the shoreline or to the Inuk we call, and collect sculpins for it, or whenever my dad cut up a seal after being out hunting, he'd cut up some slices of like seal fat that I would feed the seagull. And so one day I went out and taught it how to fly by throwing it in the air, and it would fly around and then come right back. And then I decided to put a little ribbon on the foot to identify it from the other seagulls. And so that was kind of the thing, like one of the things that I really enjoyed. I spent a lot of my childhood like outdoors playing with friends and hunting or camping with my family, and having these animals as pets like have taught me so many different things about life, whether it was about grieving or having a connection or a relationship, and being able to care for an animal, how to respect the animal, how to respect the land, how to there's so many teachings that come with these pet birds. Some may see it as a bad thing because it's an animal, but I really see it as a way of teaching children about many different aspects of our culture. So that's kind of how I decided that I would write a book about it, because it was one of my favorite memories growing up, and I wanted my children to remember the story and to be able to have that knowledge of what we did as kids, because my children are not living the life that I lived either, even though I'm instilling those values and the language in them. It's different, obviously, because my father was an amazing hunter, and my mother an amazing mom to all of my family. Everyone calls her mom because she's basically the mom of the family. And so yeah, it's a cute book, I would say, and I enjoy reading it to children, and I've done quite a few of them, book readings online since COVID hit, because that seems to be the thing now. We go on Zoom and and do these things, but I definitely enjoy it, and my kids love it too, and other kids too. I'm happy that they enjoy it as well.
Well, it's such a sweet book, and the illustrations are so beautiful. How did that come about in terms of, finding someone to collaborate with for the illustrations to get it the way you would like it?
I actually looked through a few books that I really liked that I would read to my children, and one of them was actually written by my cousin Nadia Mike, who is also an amazing author. She has a few books, children's books as well, and one of hers had Charlene Chua as the artist as well as the illustrator, and I absolutely loved the artwork that she did. So I decided that I would like to use or ask her to illustrate my book as well, because they're so awesome.
So here you were, a finalist for the Forward Indies Award for picture books. I mean, how did that feel? Your first children's book, and right off the hop, you're a finalist.
I honestly always feel so like privileged to be able to do these things. And I think when I receive emails or calls that, your book has been selected to be a part of this award ceremony, and I take it, and I don't take it for myself. I honestly take it for my people, for our communities, because I don't do this alone. It's all of us working together and doing things together, talking or discussing things, teaching each other. And so I often like to, you know, bring in my whole community of people into these successes that I see or do in my life.
Well, that's like a true reflection of the collective nature, of our communities. Everything from, a mom or an auntie babysitting your kids one day so you can go to a library, or, like that's how it was for me. I could never say that I did anything by myself. Oh my goodness, without all the support. So it always seems to be a collective effort, and, congratulations on that, because it's so huge, and you're going to be impacting not just Inuit children, but children from all backgrounds who should be exposed to Inuit culture and Inuit stories. And I mean, that's just amazing. So Nancy, it would be really great if you could read a short excerpt from your book, maybe in your own language, if that's okay.
Yeah, I totally can. This is the Elisapee no Yarangalu, and I'll read a short version of it. Now naligiyang makilautok Elisapee mut. Ilisatilaw magu Elisapee kanok pakityagon ng mga mew. Nerititigon na laktunilo o mayunik. Ilineaktis si maluniw. Kinuis ang nimidlo ilineaktis si maluniw. Kautamat ilinari kami Elisapee ang ikakatalaw tuwagtunilo naninasawak tuniw now. Naritipat tuniw now ikituniulo ani katigigyaktulak pingwa katiginakamiw.
That's so beautiful. And it's so great that you have it not just in English, but in your own language for your kids, and, to help preserve the language. Because I think that's a key part of, all the work that we do today is cultural revitalization.
Thank you.
And so the, obvious question then is, there going to be more books in the future, more children's books?
I have more ideas, and I just haven't taken the time to, make it happen. But, who knows? It might happen sooner rather than later, maybe.
With everything that you have going on. Oh my goodness. Well, thank you for sharing that. I'm really excited, because I'll be able to share it on, the Warrior Life podcast. People will be able to hear you reading that in your own language, but also the Warrior Kids podcast that we have for kids, so that they can hear people from different First Nations cultures, Inuit and Métis cultures, and language. And part of the Warrior Kids podcast is also providing a focus on learning new words and hearing other languages. And, I think that's really important. So thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing your background. But before we let you go, I'd really love to hear from you, because you're so involved at the community level, at the organizational level, what you think some of the most urgent Inuit issues are right now, that are facing the Inuit, that you think our listeners should know about. Because as you probably have noticed, mainstream media doesn't give priority focus to Inuit issues or issues in the North generally.
I think one of the things, like, throughout my lifetime that I've seen is that we've gone through a time of, figuring out our identity and who we are, and then went through being proud and becoming proud of who we are, and becoming proud of our culture, language, our ways of doing, our values, and whatnot. And more recently, I think that we're a bit becoming more comfortable in our spaces, that I believe it's time to set boundaries. And I'm seeing that quite often in our communities where people are, speaking up more about what they want or what they don't want. And one of the things that is happening currently in, near Pond Inlet in further north in Nunavut is that many hunters and Inuit are protesting for the Mary River mine because the Mary River, the mining company, is hoping to expand the mine, and Inuit are not wanting that because it's been affecting the animals, the land, and the people. And so hunters are out there, protesting and standing up for themselves and speaking up. And I truly think that is amazing, and so proud of Inuit being able to do that, because we were silenced for so long, it seems, and so humble that sometimes it's harder to be more outspoken. And so it feels good and reassuring to see Inuit talking about these issues that we see in our communities and having their voices heard. And I think that's so important.
Oh, it's so important. I did a podcast last week about this issue and about how Inuit voices have not been given a priority in the media. We hardly hear what Inuit want, what their goals are, how things are working for them. And I think that's, one of the reasons why we all have to come together and work in solidarity and help amplify each other's voices, because it's so important. I mean, most Canadians had no idea what the background was for any of this, that in fact the mine wanted to double its output, which would increase shipping and bring in rails and no question about what would the impact on the Inuit be. So thank you for raising that. And are there specific things that we can do, either as other Indigenous activists or Canadian allies or anyone, that we can do to support the Inuit?
I think that we're feeling the support from other Indigenous communities, and just when Indigenous people are speaking up or doing things, being action oriented, anything, and we are always, I find I'm always empowered to see these, and I think that's a great way to feel connected with other Indigenous groups. But as Inuit, I think that one of the biggest supports we need currently is to be able to, have our voice in all platforms, because sometimes being so far from the rest of Canada, we are often not forgotten, but just not taken the same way, I guess, because we are in the north and because of our location. So I think that whatever support you can give to northern communities, feel free, because we are going through a time of change and figuring out how we can improve our lives, our societies, or whether it's healthcare, having better access to healthcare. There's so much work to do, but we feel the love from other Indigenous groups. So I think that's all we need.
Well, that's awesome. And I think if we continue to support one another and amplify each other's voices, share each other's work, and make sure that all the work that we're doing is to advance those voices, because, like you said, Inuit voices have been ignored or not considered for many generations, similar to First Nations voices. But even in a modern context, Inuit voices aren't represented as much in things like mainstream media that Canadians would be exposed to. So hopefully things like this podcast and the book that you're writing and the artistic work that you're doing and the community-based work that you're doing, all of that is going to make a huge difference. And it's our job to support all the work that you're doing. So Nancy, this has been an incredible conversation and just learning about you. And I'm sure we didn't even talk about a fraction of all the work that you do and all the experiences that you've had. But I'm really honored that you took the time to have this conversation with me, because I know that there are going to be so many people listening to this or watching this on YouTube and be really inspired and motivated to take action and support the Inuit. So thank you so much for doing this for all of the listeners.
Thank you.
And thank you to all of the listeners or viewers for taking the time to learn more and to be intentional about hearing other voices. And once you know more, then you're obligated to do more, because this podcast was never designed to be about entertainment. This podcast is about education for action. So all of the different ways in which you can support all of the people that appear on this podcast and the communities they represent, we always make sure to leave links. So I'll leave a link to this amazing children's book that you can buy, whether or not you have kids, because you can gift it to other people. Teachers can use it. Classrooms can use it. So go out there and support this amazing book, and also take time to learn more. Follow Nancy on Instagram. I've been showing her Instagram account up there. Follow her, see what she's doing, support her work, and all of the other organizations that were mentioned here, like ᒪᑭթ뚜ᖅ. They're doing great work. Follow them on Twitter, follow them on social media, share their reports, press governments to act on the things that ᒪᑭթ뚜ᖅ and Inuit women are saying that they want and that they need. And I think that'll go a long way and continue to amplify these voices. And don't forget, we have a podcast for kids. It's called Warrior Kids Podcast, where we engage with younger kids about all of the issues that we talk about here in the Warrior Life podcast, but at a warrior kid level, and expose them to all different Native cultures, Inuit cultures, Métis cultures, north and south of the arbitrary border in Canada and the US. And you can access all of this content in one spot on my website, www.pampalmater.com. Till next time, keep living a warrior life. Walaliad.